What age do you want to retire?
60.
How long does it take you to get ready in the mornings?
About half an hour.
Most embarrassing moment of your life?
Oof. Don't know.
Favorite color?
Green.
What time of day are you most inspired?
Mornings.
How many hours of sleep can you survive on?
6, 7.
Fill in the blank. An upcoming artificial intelligence trend is blank.
Amazing.
The city in which the best kiss of your life happened.
Iași, Romania.
Pick one, Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk.
None.
The biggest mistake of your career.
Don't know. I don't think I've made mistakes.
How do you relax?
I look at cars.
How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
Until a month ago, about 4.
A habit of yours that you hate.
Smoking.
The most valuable skill you've learned in life.
Learning
Your,
constantly.
your favorite Netflix show.
I haven't been watching Netflix to have a favorite show.
One word description of your leadership style.
Inclusive.
Coffee or tea to kickstart your day.
Coffee, but not since a month ago. Haven't found a surrogate yet.
Top
Open for ideas.
priority in your daily schedule.
Planning my day.
Ideal vacation spot for relaxation.
At my country house.
Key factor for maintaining a work-life balance.
Having my family around.
Okay. Well, that was the end of the rapid fire round. Now we can move on to the longer questions, which you can answer with as much time and ease as you like. The first one is, as the chair of the Special Committee on Artificial Intelligence in the Digital Age, AIDA, you're at the forefront of shaping EU policies on AI. How do you balance fostering innovation with ensuring ethical and responsible AI development?
Well, by doing exactly what we did with the AI Act. First of all, setting both as not an either or, but rather as a twin objective that you follow through all of the work that you do if the objective is to have a regulation or framework, a governance framework on AI. And this is what we did. We started off with the twin objectives of protecting rights and interests of society on one hand, and on the other, stimulating innovation, creating the conditions for growth. And again, not sacrificing one for the other, not in a binary logic, but in a complementary logic. And I think that we have managed that. And how you do it? You do it by making sure that you put the right safeguards in place in the text to fulfill that objective of protecting the rights and the interests of citizens. And at the same time, also introducing the enablers that the business needs in order to maintain an interest in being creative, in innovating, in staying in this jurisdiction, and doing the very important business of developing and deploying AI. So if you do that, then you can fulfill both objectives.
And how is international cooperation being improved in this regard?
Well, international cooperation is something that I consider to be a must, but is not going to come easy because there is a competitive edge in this conversation. There is a geopolitical angle to AI, one which was not that evident 4 or 5 years ago when we started the journey of the AI Act, but which has become more and more evident over the last 2 years since the emergence of LLMs and generative AI, with right now the entire universe more or less being acutely aware of how important AI as a technology is for the future, for everything in this future, not only in economical terms, but also in societal and, again, geopolitical terms. And therefore, the topic of cooperation is no longer a given, is no longer simple. Even partners who, in a way, understand the role of technology in society in the same way, who are guided by the same values, even there is an element of competitiveness, and whoever controls the key resources for artificial intelligence, from energy to data to infrastructure and compute, will also control a lot of the direction of travel for the technology. And then there's also the competition over standards and governance and regulatory frameworks. And that's where, again, even among friends, there is an element of competition that is inevitable. All this does not mean that we shouldn't be, and that there shouldn't be a constant struggle and effort invested in cooperation, because it's the only way we can actually deal with what I think will be some remarkable evolutions of the technology in the future. No jurisdiction, no matter how big, whether it's US or Europe taken together, or China or anyone else, could handle it alone, which means that there needs to be an effort invested in creating the governance framework that will give us the common place to discuss these moments in the future when we will be at awe as to what AI can do. And at that moment will also require action. And again, we have to be prepared for that moment when action is needed. So then, until then, we have to keep on investing, albeit the competition environment in which we'll find ourselves, but we'll have to keep on investing in competition and in cooperation, sorry.
So speaking of action and cooperation, your own experience spans from legal roles to leadership positions in the European Parliament and the European Commission. How has this diverse background influenced your approach to policymaking, particularly in the areas of security, migration, and now digital technologies?
Well, there is one thing I've learned throughout my experience, which a lot was spent negotiating, by the way, in all shapes and sizes, was that you always have to be open to learn from the others. You have to make sure that you listen to everyone that have an input and a say and a contribution to make. There is no idea that cannot be a helpful one. Even if you don't take it, it still can help in the choices that you make and that you bring in a discussion or in a negotiation or in a file. And that, again, ultimately, it's through give and take, through compromise, that you achieve something. If you start with the understanding that you're going to impose your view upon everyone else's and consider that a success, it's a wrong assumption to have, even if somehow by miracle you manage to impose entirely your view. That means that there is something wrong in that product, and ultimately it's not going to hold. As I always say, in a negotiation or in a framework like this one, when you prepare a political product of this nature, everyone has to leave the room equally happy and equally unhappy. That is when you know you've had a good negotiation.
And so besides compromise, is there any other strategy that you employ to foster collaboration and consensus building?
Oh, there are many tactics, let's say, strategies that you use to arrive at a complete product. I don't think it would necessarily be a good use of anyone's time to go through them. But again, there's an array of different strategies that you have to use if you want to get in a complex environment such as this one, politically, institutionally, to get to an end result, particularly in a file as important and as complex as this one.
Mm-hmm. So you've also been vocal about the importance of countering disinformation and promoting media literacy, especially during elections. How do you propose tackling the spread of fake news while safeguarding freedom of expression and independent journalism?
By instilling a bit more responsibility into the platforms that are the conduit for this information these days. The responsibility itself, or the fact of lying, or the fact of spreading fake news by physical persons, by individuals, is something that is as old as mankind. There were always people who tried to manipulate others using whatever tools were available at that moment in history. What is specific today, and what makes this phenomenon much more destructive to the cohesion of society, and we see the results today in most of our democracies, is the fact that you have now social media, that you have now the digital part of our lives, which allows for this to spread, to accelerate, to amplify at a scale that is unprecedented from any other moments in our history. So this is what is specific about disinformation today. Not that all of a sudden we woke up and we discovered that we are surrounded by fake news and people who have an interest to use information to manipulate or to distort reality for their own political or any other type of benefit. So therefore, the solution is, because you can't change human nature, there will always be those tempted to tell a lie, to convince others, and there will always be weaknesses inside our communities and us as human beings to accept or to believe or to replicate what we hear to try and convince others ourselves. But then again, if you want to put a dent in this, if you want to somewhat change the current dynamic, you need to look at the conduit. And the conduit is where there needs to be a responsibility introduced in the equation, just as 50, 60, 70 years ago, when radio and television became part of society and were used as the conduits for putting information out there. And also at the time, we asked ourselves the question, can we allow a journalist, a radio host, TV host, or a TV station to say whatever they want unchecked without an editorial responsibility for the content that they display on the screen or put on the air? Similarly, right now, at least that's what we believe in the European Union, and that's why you have the DSA. Similarly, right now, we say platforms cannot call themselves indifferent to what happens on their technical environment, let's say. They cannot just be a neutral conduit of that disinformation. There has to be a responsibility for that content. That's the fundamental logic of the DSA. I know that in the US, the perspective is somewhat different. I don't think that this logic that I mentioned earlier contradicts in any way freedom of expression or the First Amendment in the US Constitution. I believe actually the two can work rather well side by side, just as they worked, again, rather well side by side at the time when radio and television were doing what social media is doing today. So that's where I think we need to work. And then, of course, most importantly, but this is something that has also existed since technology started to be used to amplify messages, which is we need to increase the resilience of societies, the capacity of societies to distinguish between fact and non-fact, between truth and lie. And that means education, that means critical thinking, because ultimately it's the best way, it's the best tool you can have when you manage to instill in the minds of every user the reflex of checking, of asking themselves, is it true or not? Do I want to make sure that I get my facts straight by also verifying somewhere else? I don't necessarily to believe anything that I see or hear. So
But
the combination of the two can deliver us from the current conundrum.
But are there any specific initiatives or legislative proposals that you're championing to address these challenges posed by disinformation campaigns?
Well, for me, it has been one of the main drivers for the past mandate, and this is why I have jumped on let's say the AI wagon from day one. Just as I would have jumped on the DSA wagon as well, because for me the two are in fact the most important tools in that respect. The combination of the Digital Services Act and the AI Act are the tools that I think can deliver that health check of our information space to the point where we can have a reversal of the current trends of disinformation. So I would very much put my money on these two. Of course, the crucial thing now is how they are going to be implemented. With the DSA, we have started already. The first letters, the first demands from the European Commission as the enforcer have been sent to the big platforms out there. There remains to be seen how they understand that they need to address the structural risks in the way those platforms work, in the way they amplify messages, so on and so forth. And the same thing is going when the AI Act is going to kick in, which is still to come. There's a calendar. There's an intermediary period from the moment that the Act was adopted to the moment when it's going to become enforceable. And then we're going to have the combination of the two set of norms, which can really, again, instill responsibility in the space. But implementation is never easy. It takes a lot of tact, patience, know-how, and an open mind on the side of the regulators, just as it takes also a change of mindset for those that are the subjects of the law who need to understand that they now have a societal role which cannot be denied.
So, being on this AI bandwagon, how do you see digital innovations shaping the future of marketing strategies, for instance, especially in the context of data privacy and consumer protection?
Well, it's not only going to change that, it's not only going to change marketing strategy. For me, this is, in fact, we've been in some sort of a digital revolution for the last 20 years, but for me, this is the pinnacle of that revolution with AI. AI is, in fact, that technology that kind of caps it all, because it's so transversal, because it's so much present, and is going to be even more so in the next few years in everything. It's an enabling technology for all sectors of the economy, but at the same time, it's disruptive for the way society works, for the way society is interacting with the state, also for how states themselves are going to function. So again, for me, it's not only how it changes marketing strategies, is how it changes everything around us. And I'm not necessarily saying it to alarm everyone. I'm not an alarmist when it comes to impact of AI. I'm just saying it because I think we need to be aware of that, soberly aware, and to take the steps to prepare for that moment. Again, calmly. It's important that we understand that we are the ones that can control the direction of travel for how this technology is impacting our lives. We have to remain the ones controlling the direction of travel. That's why I believed from day one that rules are important, and it was time to bring in a governance framework around AI, and AI Act is exactly that. It's a model of governance for AI, and I think it is what we need to responsibly do also in the future, and the advice that I would give to all other jurisdictions to make sure that they put themselves in firm control for their own sake as rule makers, as policymakers, and the sake of societies.
So you don't want to say that it's going to lead to massive job losses, for instance?
No, because I don't think it's going to lead to massive job losses. Yes, it's going to it would be foolish to say that it's not going to render some jobs as we know them today irrelevant. Absolutely. And I think for the first time in history, unlike many of the other industrial revolutions in the past, for the first time in history is going to affect more, let's say, the white collar type of jobs than the blue collar type of jobs, because AI is not going to cut anyone's hair, nor is it going to fix anyone's car. So a lot of the manual labor, as we know it, won't be changed other than by maybe adding some extra layer of automation and assistance. But there will always be a role for the human in anything that implies manual input. When it comes to intellectual inputs and jobs that are exclusively based on intellectual input, that is where the question is. And again, some of these jobs will perhaps even disappear altogether. And that happened again with every other industrial revolution in the past, but they're going to be replaced by new categories of jobs that we cannot think of today. We already have prompt engineers. 5-6 years ago, this job didn't exist. Now it does. And they are probably going to become what the code writers used to be 5 years ago. The code writers used to be the most expensive resource in the digital bubble. Right now, I think those that would have the savviness of prompting AI in the right way to give you the kind of results that you need are going to be the wizards of today and tomorrow. And then again, there'll be something else that is going to come and replace that. There will be a constant cycle of that, which means that, again, it's not about job losses as it's going to be a matter of job transformation. And also job fluidity. I think there'll be much more fluidity in this space than we knew before. That stability that was part of our economy and our labor market back in the days when you would do the same thing for 20 years, I think that to a large extent is going to be gone, because the AI and its impact is going to be fluid, constantly shaping, reshaping, leaping forward, which means that also the job market and the labor environment as such is going to have to remain quite agile. So it's all going to boil down on the ability that societies will have, first of all, to educate kids, students in the right way, to rethink the way competencies are being passed on, what kind of competencies are relevant in this kind of future, and then most importantly, to reskill the current job force to be able to handle this sort of fluidity, this sort of agility that is going to be required in the years to come. Again, a librarian is still doing the work of a librarian today. 2 years from now, a librarian will have to do her job or his job completely different, because AI is going to do 80 to 90% of what he or she does right now. Same thing for lawyers, same thing for air traffic controllers, same thing for many of the other jobs which right now are, again, very firmly anchored into the way we look at the labor market, but who are going to be changed. And again, we need to prepare our labor force for that.
And so, is the EU planning to do something about reskilling programs, or is the AI Act at all? Were these some discussions that happened during the AI Act negotiations?
Well, we could not do much on this in the AI Act because education and labor are not among the competences that are enshrined in the treaty at EU level. They are still national competences. So the one thing you could do at EU level, and I'm hoping that we're going to see that in this new political cycle that is coming, is to give somewhat the political direction, some, let's say, loose guidance as to what needs to be done, both in terms of education and reskilling programs and AI talent, let's say, but not only AI talent that is necessary to survive in an AI-driven world. So it's two kind of discussions. First, talent for AI, but also talent to survive in an AI world. But all of these things ultimately are going to be for the member states to do nationally. I would say personally, unfortunately, I would like to see, and I'm not the only one, a lot of EU citizens, when asked what competences they would like to see elevated from the national level to the EU level, they constantly say education, labor, health, because they consider that EU can bring much more effective action than isolated at member states level. I'm one of those who believe that firmly, but again, we're not there yet. We don't have yet the treaty that would allow for the EU to intervene and bring in hard instruments in coordinating neither education nor labor markets. So again, it's still going to be individual action by member state governments alone, with some loose guidance at EU level and possibly some funding programs that would be stimulating that kind of thinking and action at national level. I think that even with this, let's say, set of minimum tools, I think the EU should act, because I won't repeat what I said. This is going to be fundamental if we are going to have a successful transition towards an AI-powered world, so that member states understand the need to invest significantly into such programs.
And so, what advice would you have for job seekers looking to get into legislation, trying to help with AI legislation? What advice would you have for people looking to get into your industry?
Well, if anyone is looking to get into the AI industry itself, then again, clearly investing in the skills necessary for that is crucial. For anyone else looking at the future and wondering, do I fit in that? Am I sufficiently prepared, regardless of what you want to do with your life? Or regardless of the job that one has in mind, I think the issue is to remain open to what is going to happen, to understand that the job as one might project it today is not necessarily going to look the same 1 or 2 years from now. Whether you're in a university right now already planning your future job, be prepared that by the time you graduate, most likely the job that you have in mind might look very different than today. Because of the impact of AI, but again, not to look at this as an evil, something that should scare anyone. It's just a new reality. It's something that actually is fascinating. It will also bring huge benefits, and we just have to again be prepared for it. Be as inquisitive as possible. Even demand, whether you are already working, doesn't matter in which sector, to actually start actively even asking for your employer to be starting to think about how skills in your company or your little business or bigger business need to be adapted for what AI is going to bring to that specific business model.
So the last question for you is of a personal kind. What would you be doing in your life if not this?
Oh, a lot of other things. I've changed tack quite often in my life, not only in terms of substance, but also in terms of setting institutions. Always working in the public sector, I always wondered what it would be like to go to the private sector. I've been tempted several times, including now, but eventually the public sector still remains dearest to my heart because it gives me a sense of purpose that somehow I feel I wouldn't get in the private sector. No offense to the private sector, I admire what they do. So I'll still be somewhere trying to serve a public interest, the one thing that is a red thread throughout my professional life has been that the moment I no longer learn something new, I get bored and I look for something else. So that's going to stay.